Have you ever tried to hold everything together, only to watch it slip through your hands anyway? You planned, you prayed, you did everything right, and still, things didn't turn out the way you hoped. That moment when control breaks, when life refuses to fit into your timeline, it feels like failure. Doesn't it? But what if that's exactly where God wants to meet you? Not in the strength of your grip, but in the softness of your surrender. Letting go isn't weakness. It's trust. It's the courage to release what was never yours to carry. It's the quiet act of saying, Lord, I don't understand, but I'm still here. There's a beauty in that kind of faith, the kind that doesn't need to see the full picture to keep walking. Because faith doesn't always look like certainty. Sometimes, it looks like open hands and tired eyes that still look up. So many women carry silent battles inside, the need to control, to plan, to protect everyone and everything. But when the weight becomes too much, when the plans fall apart, that's where grace begins. The beauty of letting go is that it doesn't mean losing. It means trusting that God knows what to do with what you release. When you stop forcing life to obey your plans, you make space for miracles to unfold. If this message already feels personal, if something inside you whispers, "That's me," then stay until the end. This story was meant for you. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Here, we share stories that heal the heart, strengthen faith, and remind you that even when life feels uncertain, God's plan never is. So take a deep breath, open your hands. It's time to discover the beauty of letting go. It always starts with good intentions. She just wants things to be right, to keep her home peaceful, her family safe, her plans secure. So she tries to organize, plan, and predict every detail of her life, believing that if she can just stay ahead of the chaos, she'll finally find peace. But peace built on control isn't peace at all. It's exhaustion disguised as order. The more she tries to manage every outcome, the less she sleeps, the less she laughs, the less she feels alive. She prays, yes, but her prayers sound more like instructions to heaven. Lord, please make it happen this way. And when things don't go her way, doubt creeps in. Not in God's ability, but in His timing. Control feels comforting because it makes her feel capable. It convinces her that she can protect herself from pain, disappointment, and loss. But life, in its quiet honesty, always reminds us we're not in charge. The car breaks down, the job falls through, the child gets sick, and suddenly, she's face to face with the truth she's been avoiding. Control is an illusion. It doesn't prevent pain. It only delays surrender. She starts to realize that the tighter she holds things, the more they slip through her fingers. Even love can't breathe when it's strangled by fear. The scriptures have whispered this truth all along. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Stillness isn't inactivity, it's trust. It's a spiritual posture that says, I can't, but you can. But stillness feels foreign to a restless heart. She's spent so long equating busyness with purpose that silence now feels like failure. Yet it's in the silence where she begins to feel His presence again. Not loud, not demanding, just steady and near. She starts to see that maybe peace was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be received. So she sits there, one morning, coffee in hand, watching sunlight spill across the table. And for the first time in a long time, she doesn't plan. She just breathes. It's such a small act that no one would notice, but heaven does. Because surrender doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to worry for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's letting the to-do list wait. Sometimes it's not fixing what broke. And in that tiny pause, she realizes something beautiful. Control was never her burden to carry. It was her invitation to trust. And from that moment, she starts to see her life differently. Not as a puzzle to complete, but as a mystery to walk through with God. The weight doesn't disappear overnight, but it becomes lighter, because now she knows it's shared. And that realization, that she doesn't have to manage the storm to be safe within it, is the first step toward freedom. The illusion of control fades, and in its place, faith begins to bloom. Letting go sounds beautiful, until it asks for something you love. It's easy to release what doesn't matter. But what about the dream you've prayed over for years? The relationship you fought to hold together? The identity you built around being strong, capable, unshakable. That's where surrender stops being poetic and starts being painful. She's terrified of losing what defines her, because if she lets it go, who is she without it? That's the question that keeps her awake at night. The fear of losing isn't just about people or plans. It's about losing control over her story. But here's the paradox of faith. Every time she loosens her grip, she discovers something she couldn't see before. When Abraham let go of Isaac, he didn't lose his promise. He found God's provision. When Peter let go of the boat, he didn't drown. He walked on water. The act of letting go has always been sacred, not destructive, because what's surrendered in love doesn't disappear. It transforms. The woman begins to notice this truth written quietly across her life. Every loss that hurt her also shaped her. Every door that closed redirected her to grace she didn't expect. And the more she resists, the more she realizes that holding on doesn't preserve things. It suffocates them. She remembers the words of Christ in Matthew. Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. It finally makes sense. She's not being asked to lose what she loves. She's being invited to love without fear. Because love rooted in control isn't love at all. It's possession. And God never meant for her heart to be a cage. He meant for it to be a garden. When she releases what she clings to, she makes room for new life to grow. She stops begging God to keep things the same and starts thanking Him for what's still blooming. And in that gratitude, peace begins to replace panic. Still, the fear doesn't vanish overnight. Some nights, she still reaches for what she's already released. She still checks the door she just closed, just to make sure she really did it. But every time she chooses trust over fear, heaven celebrates. Because faith isn't a one-time act, it's a daily decision. And maybe letting go isn't about losing things, but about learning that what's meant for her heart doesn't need to be held so tightly. It knows how to stay. The beauty of letting go, she realizes, is that God never leaves empty hands. He fills them differently, sometimes with peace, sometimes with purpose, sometimes with a softness she's never felt before. Her story isn't falling apart. It's unfolding, and every release, every surrender, becomes a quiet act of worship. Because to trust God in what you cannot keep is to finally know what freedom feels like. There comes a night when strength finally gives way. She's done everything, planned, prayed, endured, and yet nothing feels steady anymore. The dishes sit untouched, the phone goes unanswered, and for the first time in years, she lets the mask slip. Her quiet composure breaks into tears she didn't know she was still capable of crying. It's not dramatic, it's holy. Because somewhere between exhaustion and surrender, she realizes she's been fighting battles God never asked her to fight. The control, the worry, the fear, it was never faith. It was survival. And as the tears fall, they don't represent defeat. They represent release. She kneels, not in ritual, but in desperation. Words don't come easily, just a trembling whisper. Lord, I can't anymore. It's the most honest prayer she's ever prayed. No rehearsed phrases, no polished faith, just the raw ache of a soul that's finally tired of pretending. And in that silence, something shifts. The noise that's filled her mind for months begins to fade, and she senses, not hears but senses, a presence. Gentle, patient, familiar. The one she thought had gone quiet never left. He was just waiting for her to stop shouting over his whisper. The breaking point, it turns out, isn't the end. It's the beginning of intimacy. Everything feels slower now. She sits on the floor for a long time, surrounded by the mess of her undone life, and for once, she doesn't rush to fix it. There's beauty in the stillness, even if it's messy. Her heart beats softer, her breathing steadies. She realizes that the God she's been trying to impress was never looking for performance. He was waiting for presence. And somehow, through the tears, she feels lighter. The pain doesn't vanish, but it starts to lose its power. Every sob becomes a step closer to peace. Every release, a prayer of trust she never learned to pray until now. It's in this quiet collapse that she learns something sacred. Faith isn't always standing tall. It's sometimes falling apart in the right direction. And falling toward God feels safer than standing without Him. The doubts, the guilt, the self-blame, they start to fade like smoke after the storm. Because now she knows she was never meant to carry everything alone. Her breaking wasn't her failure, it was his invitation. And for the first time in a long time, she answers it. The morning after the storm always feels different, not because everything is fixed, but because she no longer needs it to be. The world around her hasn't changed much. The dishes are still there, the tasks still wait, life keeps moving. But something within her has shifted. The noise that once ruled her mind has quieted into a soft hum of peace. She breathes deeper now, moves slower. There's a stillness in her that doesn't come from control, but from release. And for the first time in a long time, she feels safe. Not because life is certain, but because God is. Her family notices it before she does. The tension in her shoulders is gone. The sharp tone in her voice has softened into warmth. She laughs again, not because everything is perfect, but because she no longer needs it to be. Her joy doesn't depend on outcomes anymore. It flows from trust. She's learning that peace isn't the absence of struggle. It's the presence of grace in the middle of it. Even the small things like sunlight through the window or the smell of coffee in the morning begin to feel sacred. It's as if heaven keeps reminding her, this is enough. Spiritually, something new takes root. Her prayers become simpler, gentler. She no longer prays to change everything around her. She prays to stay open within it. She starts thanking God for what once felt like loss, because now she sees how every no protected her, how every delay prepared her. She stops trying to read the future and learns to rest in the present. And that rest isn't laziness, it's faith. The kind of faith that doesn't demand answers, only presence. She walks outside one afternoon, the wind brushing through her hair, and she smiles. Really smiles. The world hasn't gotten easier, but her soul has gotten lighter. She's no longer gripping life with trembling hands. She's holding it with gratitude. And she finally understands. Letting go wasn't about losing control. It was about finding freedom. It was about trusting that God's hands are steadier than hers ever could be, and that the life he's shaping is far more beautiful than the one she tried to design. As she stands there, sunlight wrapping around her like an embrace, she whispers the quietest kind of prayer, not of desperation, but of peace. Thank you for taking what I couldn't carry. And in that whisper, she feels it, the gentle rhythm of grace, steady as her heartbeat, strong enough to carry her forward. The beauty of letting go is that she never fell. She was always being held. Maybe peace was never about having everything under control. Maybe it was about realizing you never had to, because the hands that shaped the stars are the same hands holding you now, and they've never once let go. For so long, you've carried what was never yours to fix. You've prayed, planned, pushed, and still felt like you were falling apart. But here's the truth. You weren't falling apart. You were falling into grace. And grace doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that what you release will never leave God's care. It means understanding that you don't lose by surrendering. You heal. Because when you finally stop trying to write every line of your story, you give the author room to breathe life into it again. And in that space between fear and faith, you'll find him, gentle, steady, and enough. So if this message spoke to your heart, don't let it end here. Take a deep breath and remember, you don't have to carry everything alone. Let today be the day you stop striving and start trusting. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Here we walk through stories like this together, stories of faith, redemption, and quiet courage. Because every week, we rediscover what it means to live lighter, to love deeper, and to rest in the hands that never fail. Before you scroll away, close your eyes for a moment and whisper this prayer. Lord, teach me to let go, and remind me that I've never been out of your hands. That's not just surrender, it's freedom. And maybe, just maybe, that's what you've been searching for all along.